Welcome to the program. Now, this week, one of the top stories was the release of the Kenya Certificate of Primary Education Examination results. In this show, we discuss the status of Kenya's education with special attention to primary level.
To find the schools that are around the town centers, they are overstaffed. But the schools that are in the interior, then you find one teacher.
Find out the advantages and disadvantages of both private and public schools.
Private unakuta na perform vizuri sana.
Sasa hii shule ya public ni rahisi kuliko private.
Also in the show, expert view.
Now, even primary school teachers are taking their children to private schools. And that tells you something.
But before we proceed, let us examine what has changed in the Kenya Certificate of Primary Education Examination. That is something everyone is talking about. And this story with Elijah Matiang'i.
Where we locate you.
The Education Cabinet Secretary, Fred Matiang'i, caught everyone by surprise on Thursday morning after he announced the release of the KCPE results.
We had only 21 incidents across the country of malpractice or attempted malpractice.
This year's exams were regarded as the most guarded in the Kenyan history.
When we designed a new strategy of administering exams, truth be told now, looking at the strategy later on, we actually discovered that strategy is based and is going to be dependent on the delivery of the head teachers. So if they delivered, we succeed. If they didn't deliver, we are cooked.
Another controversial subject in the sector has been the move by the Ministry of Education to stop the ranking of students and schools based on examination results.
We have a very specific way of ranking, and we gave the ministry the mandate to consult the stakeholders and to come up with a policy. So it's acceptable that I'm very sure whatever we ask, because we don't just want ranking for the sake of ranking, saying so and so is number one. We, part of our proposal was that we're also to rank even co-curricular activities.
Meanwhile, Bridge International Academies, that has been facing criticism from stakeholders over the quality of its education, produced 6 students with a pass mark greater than 400. About 30 pupils from the schools will join national schools for having scored above 380 marks, the pass mark set by the ministry this year. Another 1,100 people scored over 300 marks. Bridge, which has a chain of nursery and primary schools in all the 47 counties in Kenya, registered 3,150 pupils for the 2016 KCPE examination. However, most of the candidates sat the examination in other schools, as very few of its schools are registered centers for the KCPE examinations. The release of this year's KCPE results came earlier than expected, what education officials termed as a new way of doing things. And with that change, many Kenyans are now hoping that the standards of primary school education in the country will change for the better. For the Chamwada report, I'm Elijah Matiang'i.
All right. Thank you, Elijah, for that story. We are discussing the status of education in Kenya with special attention to primary level. Kenya's public schools, especially those in urban areas, are overflowing. Some schools have close to 3,000 pupils, accommodating as high as 70 pupils per class in several streams. For example, Daima Primary School in Nairobi's Huruma Estate has 2,700 pupils. Most informal settlements in the city are experiencing that pressure.
I taught in Olympic Primary School. By then, Olympic used to be number 1. The teacher ratio was 1 to 45, highest 50 in a class. But now, since the announcement of free primary education, the children flocked in that school, in that one teacher was teaching 100 children, and then the performance dropped. Recommended ratio is 45 students per teacher. As per the Ministry of Education. But right now, as I'm talking to you, the students in Olympic Primary School are 4,000 plus. Because when we were doing the exams, the trial exams this year, the class 7s were 600. Class 7s alone were 600, though the total population is 4,000 plus. So that is the population in 2016 Olympic Primary School. Kibera Primary School, they are having 3,500 plus.
The primary school enrollment shot up from about 6 million in 2002 to 7 million in 2003. The figure has been increasing steadily to about 10.1 million in 2015. Here is the take of Emmanuel Manyasa, the country manager of Uwezo Kenya, an organization that does learning assessment on what has changed.
We have also seen a bit more higher rates of retention of children in school. So more children are finishing the primary cycle from class 1 to 8. Dropout rates have dropped compared to the pre-2003 situation.
According to the 2016 Kenya Economic Survey, the national level average primary pupil teacher ratio increased from 42 to 1 in 2005 to 46 to 1 in 2009, but it dropped to 41 to 1 in 2015. Pupil-teacher ratio refers to the number of pupils divided by the number of teachers in a country, school, or class. So the national figures from the face value show that Kenya is doing well. But is that the case?
Those ratios are misleading. They are misleading in the sense that how those teachers themselves are distributed is not reflected in the pupil-teacher ratio. And two, they are misleading also in the sense that you will see teachers who are present, but whether they are teaching actually is another matter. So the number of teachers in school does not necessarily confirm that those children in that school are learning, and that's a challenge. The last survey that we had the highest pupil-teacher ratio in Turkana County with 90 children per teacher, and the lowest was in Tharaka Nithi with 28 children per teacher. And that is how unequitable the distribution of teachers in the country.
You find that some teachers are concentrated in the town areas, or they are concentrated in the areas that are hardship because they earn more. But you find that some areas that are maybe even, and I think the TSC also need to review what is hardship, or which are these hardship areas. Because teachers don't want to go to those interiors, and that's why you find a school with one teacher. But in the town center, I'll give you an example of Kajiado County. To find the schools that are around the town centers, they are overstaffed. But the schools that are in the interiors, then you find one teacher.
The total number of teachers in public primary schools grew by 5.1% from 200,700 in 2014 to about 211,000 in 2015, partly due to engagement of teachers on contract. Good afternoon. Student-teacher ratios are a general way to measure teacher workloads and resource allocations in public schools, as well as the amount of individual attention a child is likely to receive from teachers. In some countries, especially in the developed world, the national average ratio is as low as 10 to 1. In Kenya, stakeholders are now pushing for emphasis on student-teacher ratio at classroom level rather than school or national level. Within that context, the ratio recommended by the Ministry of Education is 50 to 1.
So that if you go to a school where you have class 1 up to 8, one stream, and you have 12 teachers, it means that at any given time when all classes have teachers, there are 2 teachers who are resting in the staff room. And then you go to another school and you find in a school of class 1 to 8, one stream, you have 4 teachers. So at any one time, when all the teachers are in class, you still have 4 classrooms unattended.
The other key concern in Kenyan public schools is teacher absenteeism, with Cabinet Secretary for Education Dr. Fred Matiang'i vowing to confront the problem head on.
I go to one school which has got 16 teachers. In that afternoon, the head teacher and 8 teachers are not in the office. They are not in school. And when I asked the deputy where is the principal, or he has gone to hospital, there are stories. And this is real. These things are happening. I asked the quality assurance officer, when were you last in this school? Because when you go to the classrooms, there are issues there. She tells me 2014. That school is 6 kilometers away from our office.
Now, even primary school teachers are taking their children to private schools. And that tells you something. If the cook in the house does not eat the food they cook, it tells you something about what they know about that food.
Previously, before the Cabinet Secretary Matiang'i took over, most of the teachers were not attending classes. They were just relaxed. They would since they know they work for TSC, no one is following them up, they attend class when they feel like. But right now, Matiang'i has come with this something that there's a student who has to be in charge to ensure that records every teacher who comes for class. And that's something that was improved, because every time you ask a child, did the teacher come to class? They're like, yes, all the teachers, we learned all the subjects, teachers came to class. And I think that's something that needs to be pushed very much.
Give her flowers. Wow.
And that brings us to the next issue, private versus public schools.
Ukilinganisha private school na public school ambao ni za serikali, unakuta private school watoto wanapita vizuri.
Kwa sababu shule ya public ni rahisi kuliko private. Na private ni ghali kuliko shule nyingine. Uzuri ya private, walimu wako strict kuliko nini wa public.
Apart from the being congested in school and there are less teachers, the rest of the problems is manageable.
Teachers during our days had a motivation attitude. They had competition attitude. These days, they're just working for money.
Pick Kibra constituency as an example, and you will find that there are only 9 public primary schools in the constituency that has a population of about 500,000 people, and most of the schools are overflowing. What role does the private sector play?
Some of them are very close to where the parents live. So parents with little children in the slums, if they get a quality school that is affordable and to them, or is sponsored by an NGO, that's the other thing in Kibera, is you have a lot of supporters from outside. Some who do very good work, but some who are briefcase NGOs, and we don't know how they account for the money they use or raise in the name of Kibra people. But the ones that do good work, they try and they do really well. If we wanted to have sufficient public primary schools for a population of about 500,000 people, we need 15 schools. So we're 6 schools short in the public primary school sector. So we have to find out land where to build them. Right now, even within the slum, a lot of our schools in Kibra constituency are at the edge of the slum. So the children have to walk from the slum, cross the railway line to come to a school like Mbagathi.
Statistics show that by 2015, there were about 31,000 public primary schools in Kenya and just about 1,000 private schools.
The biggest challenge we've had is that there are also some private schools that have come in and they have sneaked in their own syllabus, their own way of doing things, and I think the ministry needs to be on the look and actually protect our children and our parents from being hoodwinked by such institutions that are coming in a way, coming up with their own syllabus that is not even approved by the Ministry of Education. And I would call upon the Ministry of Education to actually shut down all schools that have not complied with the proper guidelines that the ministry gives for us, any school to operate in Kenya, because we don't want our students being misled. We don't want a situation where we find that the students have gone to the school all the way to class 8 and then they cannot be registered.
One of the good things that I've seen when the private schools are running in a community like this, they also raise a competition with the government schools. And the ones that do well, they actually do better average than the government schools. So that competition is healthy. And if the public schools sleep on their laurels and they rest easy and they take things for granted, the parents vote with their feet and are willing to even pay to take them to a private school and pay a little bit more to guarantee that their child gets a quality education. The advantage of public schools, first of all, is they're supposed to be free. There are not supposed to be many hidden costs. Number 2 is the fact that we have a teacher corps that is supervised by TSC, employed, vetted, their qualification standards. In a lot of the private providers, you don't know about the qualifications of the teaching staff. But in the public government schools, the standards are there. And a lot of the teachers in the public schools, they understand that holistic education of a child, building their confidence, their leadership skills, their social and interpersonal skills is as important as the academics. In some of the private schools, they're just teaching the children to cram for exams.
Mimi sana upendelea private kwa sababu performance yao kulingana na ya public huwa private iko juu kwa sababu wako serious na kazi kuliko wala wengine, mara wako kwa mgomo, mara wanaandamana, pesa ni kidogo.
Kwa mfano hapa Narok, walimu wengi wanafunza shule za nyumbani, shule ambayo iko next na kwake. Kwa hivyo atafanya majukumu yake ya nyumbani yote, yakishaisha ndio anaenda shule. Lesson za kwanza ama 3 ama 2 zitakuwa zimeisha.
Shule ya public ni mzuri kwa maana ni shule ya wale watu ambayo hawezi na wale ambayo naweza. Na ile shule ambayo ya mwenyewe wale watu hapana weza hawezi kusomesha watoto hapo.
Hii ya serikali ni iko na advantage kabisa kwa sababu inasaidia watu maskini.
Public is pocket friendly. Most of the parents can afford public, unlike private schools, they're paying a lot of money.
One of the major challenges the Ministry of Education has been grappling with is cartels, who for them, education is business. The National Assembly Committee on Education has raised concerns over the issue, with the textbook sector being one of the areas that require an overhaul.
Initially, when I was in school, I was born in a family of 9. The book that my brother, who was my big brother, went, the mathematics book, was one. So we shared, we covered it with the Unga cover and everything else. And we shared this book until it was very old, but all of us shared one book. But we have had publishers, and it's good to have business, but at the same time, can we be having different books every year? It is not possible, because we also need to manage our resources. If then the Ministry of Education can come up with the books that the schools should buy, such that if a student loses a book, then they can only replace that book. But we have had situations where every year a school introduces new books, because they want to make business for somebody else, but at the expense of a child. So we will only say this money is not enough because we are buying books year in, year out. But we can say this year we want to buy books. Next year we want to look at the infrastructure, we'll buy desks.
Then there is debate over introduction of information communication technology in schools. The Ministry of Education this year stepped up that campaign with the 1 laptop per child project getting into the pilot stage. This is the reasoning behind the move.
It's time we now started addressing in our minds how to live, teach, interact, access content, avail content on the electronic platform, because that is how education is going. At the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, we have already converted the content for Standard 1 and 2, and we are moving forward to convert the rest of the content that we need all the way to secondary schools. Because when these children get to secondary school, they are not going to learn the way the students in secondary schools today learn. They will be able to access content on the electronic platform.
We do the same.
Roysambu Primary School in Nairobi is one of the 150 schools where test runs are taking place.
And the other one is 5, so the total is?
Here we found teachers and pupils marveling at the gadgets in anticipation of better learning, better teaching.
And finally we have the food.
However, critics say the 1 laptop per child project is too expensive and can be overtaken by changes in technology.
Let us embrace technology that is efficient. I am concerned about the focus on gadgets right now. You're buying, for instance, tablets that will be obsolete in a few years. We were promised a few months ago, in the campaigns, 1 laptop per child. Trust me, nowhere in the world. I've been a teacher in the US, I've been a teacher in many places I've traveled. 1 laptop per child doesn't work. What you need is a good computer lab and appropriate resources available that are flexible, so some children use them at home.
And bear in mind, I'm saying this particularly to the teachers and parents who are in this meeting, that we are focusing more on content, on how content is going to be accessed. We want this content to be accessed on any device. We are not so fixated on the devices we are giving today. We want you to be able to access this content on your smartphone, on your laptop, on your tablet, and even on your TV screen.
However, all those reforms may mean nothing, it is argued, if distribution of schools in the country is not fair. But what exactly should be done? What is the role of the national government, and what role should county governments play?
My view is that for standardization and for ensuring that there is quality recruitment of these teachers, it should remain with the Teacher Service Commission. But all infrastructure, including primary, should go to county government. The benefit of that is that it is going to be easier to maintain higher quality standards of infrastructure in these schools than it is right now. Because as it is right now, if you have a school here and the roof is blown off by the wind, you need to start writing to the ministry to get funds to repair the roof. If you are in a far off corner of Kenya, it is much more difficult to get a response from Nairobi than to go to your county government, which is just around there.
9 + 2. It is very sad to see any now private or any public school that has no classes. We know we have devolution. And now with the devolution, we have CDF. Every member of parliament currently is getting more than 120 million in a year for constituency development fund. This is a fund from the national government. Then how would you have schools in your constituencies that students are still learning under trees? Those are very unique situations. Currently with the national government CDF Act, it actually says now that 70% of that money should go to education. The governors who are there is a lot of money now going to devolution. Even if education is not devolved, I think it's collective responsibility, and we should know whether you are county government or the national government. If we don't get it right in our education, then we will totally fail.
So quality is not necessarily quantity, and that tagline brings us to the end of our show today. And next week...
Good job, class. Now we are going to look at practice 1 of our work today.
Bridge International Academies, in good books with the government of Liberia, recently deregistered in Uganda and here in Kenya, facing resistance from some of the stakeholders. Find out what is it the provider is doing or not doing that is causing debate. That's next week. And on behalf of the crew, thank you so much for watching, and bye-bye for now.